familiar with our organization, so the European Patients Forum is an umbrella organization of patients organization across Europe and across disease areas. So we are not disease specific. We are based in Brussels, and we support and defend the interest of patients. For my side, my name is Solène Jouan. I'm an EPF policy officer working on the topic of access to treatments. That's why I'm very happy today to be the moderator for this webinar. Actually, this webinar happens 1 year exactly, precisely following the enter into phase of the implementation of the HTA regulations. We wanted at EPF absolutely to have a webinar today because we wanted to show how patients' organization and patients have worked tirelessly in 2025 to ensure that the regulation can work in practice and especially can ensure a meaningful patient's involvement. But before giving you the agenda for today and to present you all of the speakers, I would like to give the floor actually to our interim executive director, Valentina Stramiello. I'm sure many of you joining the webinar today knows her because she has been working on HTA for many, many years. But we know HTA is very complex, can be quite technical, and we want everyone to be able to follow the webinar as comfortably as possible. So Valentina will start with a short introduction to remind everyone what is HTA, what is the HTA regulation, but also why it is important for us to be involved on HTA. So Valentina, you can take the floor.
Thank you so much, Solène, and welcome everyone. We are very happy to have so many people online today. So as Solène already mentioned, we want to make sure that everybody really understands the topic. And so I will give you a very quick understanding of what HTA is and what is HTAR. So I will start explaining acronyms. HTA stands for Health Technology Assessment. HTAR is the Health Technology Assessment Regulation. HTA is a structured process that compares a new technology with an already existing one to assess whether it is more equally or less effective. And this is usually done by evaluating the added value, effectiveness, costs, but also the wider social and ethical impact. Of course, we wanted to give a very brief description. We are very aware that there are variations on this definition. Just to clarify also, HTA is separate from marketing authorization, which is provided by the European Medicines Agencies. So it's not to be mixed or confused with what happens at the EMA level. And now a brief description of the HTA regulation. This is the regulation that was adopted to strengthen EU cooperation on HTA by avoiding duplication of work among member states and improving efficiency. Probably you will hear more about the history of the HTA regulation later, but just to say now that we have witnessed in the past a lot of repeated work, inefficiencies, and also delays in patient access to new technologies. And that's why the idea of legislation targeting HTA came into place. Next one, please. And this slide is to quickly explain what is the added value for patients, what are the objectives of the HTA regulation for patients, and how these objectives can be secured. So when it comes to the objectives, first of all, the intention is to ensure faster and more equitable patient access to innovative, safe, and effective health technologies across the European Union. And that's because we have witnessed so often that there are discrepancies in terms of quality of care in different member states, or certain treatments are made available very quickly in certain countries and much, much later in others. And so the intention here is to somehow harmonize this process. And the next one is also to help to support better informed and evidence-based decision-making, because with all member states collaborating and working together, there is a higher chance also to improve the quality of those assessments and also make the evidence-based decision-making more robust. Last but not least, build trust in the system, because this is, of course, an approach that is intended to involve stakeholders, and as the patient organizations and other stakeholders, we have been involved risks in the last few years, both in the preparation and in the implementation of the regulation. And this is somehow helping also to build more transparency and trust in the decision making. How do we secure those objectives? First of all, of course, through meaningful involvement of patients, both in joint clinical assessments and joint scientific consultations, which are the main procedures meant to either assess the new technologies or that are looking at new potential technologies. The next one is, of course, active and sustainable involvement of patient organizations with expertise in HTA. And last but not least, trainings for patients and patient organizations to be able to actively and meaningfully contribute. Next one. This is a very quick timeline to show you where we are right now. So we started exactly 1 year ago on 12 January 2025, when the HTA regulation became applicable for oncology products and ATMPs. This year, it will start applying also to medical devices. From 2028, it will apply to all orphan drugs. And as of 2030, it will apply to all medicines and medical devices that are targeted by the HTA regulation. This means that from 2030, all medicines receiving a marketing authorizations will undergo a joint clinical assessment. So this is quite a major change in the way HTA works in Europe. And I think that's one. I need to go to the next slide, please.
So this is to say why we do this webinar indeed.
Exactly. So we have somehow set the scene and the why we do this webinar. Next slide again, please. So we are 1 year forward. I think we have collected enough experience to build some first reflections on what has been going on for the past year, especially for patients. We want to present some key activities carried out for patients by patient organizations and other major stakeholders. But also we want to look ahead and reflect on what can be improved and what we should focus on in 2026. But last but not least, we want to maintain the momentum. HTA has become a very important topic on the European level, and we would like it to stay as a very relevant health policy area. So our intention here is not to forget and to put it aside. The regulation is there, but we are not putting it on the shelf. So we need to keep working on it quite substantially. I leave the floor to you, Solène.
Thank you very much, Valentina. I think it was a perfect introduction, and now we would be able to enter everyone with the same level of knowledge into the webinar and into more deeper conversation. So as promised, I will present to you the agenda that we developed for you today. So this will be the agenda. So I will take the floor for the 5 more minutes. We wanted to highlight a little bit what we have been doing at EPF in 2025. And immediately after, we will have a chat discussion with 3 persons that have actually, I know that because I've witnessed it, the work entirely in 2025. We will have a short discussion with them. With Joséphine from Cancer Person Europe, from François Oyer, from Rordis, and from Dimitrios Athanasiou from the World Duchenne Organization, 3-person representative. They will give us their perspective about what they have been doing in 2025 to ensure meaningful patient involvement, what has worked, what could be improved, and what are they planning for 2026. Following that, we are very happy to have the European Commission joining the webinar today. So we will have Julie Spoutny, a project officer in the HTA unit. She will give us the perspective of the European Commission in terms of patients' involvement and also share with us what they have been doing in 2025 to ensure this patient involvement. We will talk a lot about this implementation of the HTA regulation, but at the EU level, other projects are happening to ensure that HTA actually involve patients. And we will give the floor to a colleague of EPF, so a project officer, Bianca Pop. She will present to us the EDITA project. She will let us know how she is doing in this project to ensure patient involvement. And finally, we will close the webinar, and I will give back the floor at that moment to Valentina. She will give us her perspective for 2026. So without further ado, I will briefly let you know what we have been doing at EPF in 2025. As you can see, it was a busy year. I wanted to focus only on 4 major activities. Of course, we have been working on other elements, but this one have been the 4 principal activities that we have done in 2025. I will not enter into all of the details because this will be actually the conversation we will have with François, Joséphine, and Dimitrios. But to let you know that, of course, at EPF, we have been working on the identification of patients. As Valentina mentioned, under the HTA regulation, patients can be involved under the joint clinical assessment and joint scientific consultation. And we are being contacted by the European Commission to identify the right patients. You can imagine that this can take a lot of work because for each diseases that the medicine will undergo a joint clinical assessment or joint scientific consultation, we need to find the right patient, we need to contact them, we need to explain to this patient or this carer what is HTA, what is the HTA regulation, what is a conflict of interest, because not everyone can participate under the HTA regulation. It can take a lot of time, but we have been very happy to have the trust of the European Commission to identify some patients. And actually, Dimitrios will share his perspective because he has been involved as a patient, that we share the contact details actually to the Commission. We also tried in 2025 to improve the process. It means that since the beginning, we have flagged to the European Commission that some element could be actually improved to ensure better involvement of patients under the process. To give you an example, but I'm sure we will have a possibility to discuss with Joséphine, François, and Dimitrios on this aspect. But during the first phase of the implementation, right around February, March 2025, we have been contacted by the European Commission to find some patients, but we had only 1 week to find the right patients and carers. You can imagine that finding patients and carers in 1 week can be very complicated, and especially to find them, to explain to them what is HTA, but also to give them the time to reflect on if they would like to participate in such a project. We flagged this element to the European Commission, and now, for example, we have between 3 weeks and a month to find the right patient/carer. So that means that we are, as patient organization, really involved in the process, also to flag what can be improved right at the beginning of the implementation phase. Of course, not all of the requests that we submit to the Commission to improve the system is accepted, but at least we have a possibility to do it. We are also monitoring some national changes. So, of course, a lot of things are happening at the EU level in terms of patients' involvement, thanks to the HTA regulation. But some countries, actually, before the HTA regulations happening at the EU level, did not have any HTA happening at the national level. They had to build from scratch an HTA office. So we are trying to monitor in this country. This is the case of Cyprus, for example, or Slovenia, Slovakia. To see if right at the beginning, inside this country, there is a patient's involvement. To let you know that we are going to launch at EPF an EPF barometer on patients' involvement. And thanks to this EPF barometer, we can try to monitor what is happening in this country, also to help this country doing right at the beginning the right thing, which is patients' involvement. And finally, in 2025, or actually late 2025, we have been involved in a reflection on how to evaluate the HTA regulation. So it's true, it's really the beginning of the implementation phase, but we need to think about how to evaluate the HTA regulation, because under the law, the European Commission will have to submit a report to the Parliament and to the Council before January 2028 to highlight if the HTA regulation is working in practice. And for that, the Commission will have to evaluate some aspect, and we are part of a discussion to see which element needs to be taken into account to correctly evaluate the HTA regulations. I will stop now because we are a little bit out of time, but maybe before going to the second phase of the webinar, I would like to highlight that, of course, EPF is not doing this thing alone. We have been working in close collaboration with all of the patients' organizations that are involved on HTA, with the European Commission, with some industry representative, because our core belief, we want the HTA regulation to work in practice. But to have an HTA regulation working in practice, we need meaningful patient involvement. So I think this will be the right end to go to the second phase of our webinar, which is actually a chat discussion with 3 patient representatives that have been working tirelessly in 2025 to ensure meaningful patient involvement. I will actually let them the possibility to introduce themselves. So first on my screen, I will give the floor to François. If you can quickly introduce yourself to everyone.
Thank you very much, Soline. I hope you hear me clearly. And hello to everybody. I work for the European Organization for Rare Diseases, or ORDIS. I'm based in Paris. I've been involved in initial European projects on health technology assessment since 2010 around, and I followed all the development. And I also took part in some initiatives to learn how patients could contribute to HTA.
Second on my screen for this chat discussion with patient representative is Josephine. Go ahead.
Thanks, Solène. And it's a pleasure being online and connecting around this really important topic. So my name is Joséphine Mosset. I'm the Senior Policy Officer at Cancer Patients Europe. And for those of you who are not familiar with Cancer Patients Europe, we're a pan-European all-cancer type patient organization. And we operate from Brussels, but our membership goes across the European Union and beyond. We currently have around 90 members in around 30 countries. And of course, this has been a key topic for us, given that we sometimes like to joke and call ourselves the crash test for the EU HTA regulation. So I'm very happy to be able to share some insights today. Thanks, Solène.
And finally, go ahead, Dimitrios.
Thank you, thank you. I suppose we're supposed to start with Josephine. But anyway, my name is Dimitrios Athanasiou. I'm really happy to be with you. We work closely with also Josephine and Francois for many years, and we're very honored for this. And it's also very good that we are under, let's say, the EPF hat today, so we can discuss this critical topic and coordinate it. I am the father of Hermes, a child with rare neuromuscular disease, Duchenne. So I'm part of the global organization of Duchenne in more than, I think, than 55 countries in 6 continents. And I'm also the Vice President of Rare Disease Greece in Athens, Greece, where I'm connected also.
Thank you very much, everyone. The objective of this chat discussion is really to highlight what you have been doing in 2025, what has worked, what can be improved, and what are you planning for 2026. But before going into deeper details about what you have been doing in 2025, I would like to give you back the floor, François. You mentioned you have been involved actually on HTA before we started to speak about an HTA regulation. Can you go a little bit into more details about where we came from when we started about discussing harmonization at the EU level, potentially harmonization at the EU level? Did we speak about patients' involvement right at the beginning?
So we could go far in the past. I think immediately when the European Medicines Agency was created, some member states had the feeling that they were losing the control over new medicines arriving on the market. And that coincides, I don't know if it was a coincidence or not, with the creation of national agencies to look at the cost and economic aspects of new technologies. They invented HTA in a way, in parallel to the emergence of the EMA. And quickly, very rapidly, we could realize that alongside the EMA, there was this important discussion on the price of new medicines. So we had to look into cost effectiveness, understand this field. So in a way, it started in the mid-90s when the first organized agencies for HTA started. And to make a long story short, I think an important precision for the audience today is that this European cooperation on HTA is not exactly on HTA, as HTA is really the assessment of all the data, not only the clinical evidence, efficacy, relative efficacy, safety, etc., but all HTA encompasses also the economic aspects, ethical, organizational aspects, etc., and includes the decision to reimburse or not a technology. That's the appraisal. This European cooperation is not on HTA as it focuses on the clinical elements only, the clinical evidence, and the reports they produce are reports on the quality of the evidence. And these reports are sent to national authorities for them to decide to reimburse or not. So it's called the HTA cooperation, but really what it is a centralized or European procedure to discuss the quality of the evidence submitted by the companies, and not more. It may evolve, but that's what it is. Another important evolution since the initial projects was that they were all on a voluntary basis. And with the regulation, everything becomes mandatory. And that explains a lot in how things, what can be done and what is maybe too early. So we are all eager and impatient to have the full deployment of patient involvement, expert involvement, and in all possible activities. But I think we need to realize that it's really led by member states, and not all member states are willing to do the same efforts. Some are more open than others to the involvement of patients. So we have to navigate between these constraints by member states and working with the Commission and others to first demonstrate how useful it is to work with patients step by step. And then we hope we will see exactly what we wish for. But in terms of evolution, I think something we need to have an eye on is the transparency. With this cooperation, which is supposed to increase transparency, are we getting there? Or the willingness of member states to control the procedure, is it a limit to transparency? So don't know how much we can discuss the details, but just one illustration, for example, at the national level, we all are informed about who the experts who do the HTA are. In this European cooperation, this is secret. We don't have the names of the people, of the HTA experts who are involved. So there are differences between what was done under the voluntary cooperation, where not much was done for the involvement of patients, except for scientific advice, now called joint scientific consultations, where we had many pilots and it went quite well. Now with the mandatory cooperation, it's another level, and because of the impact at the national level, in a way it's more limited, and we'll have to learn and to convince to open more the door to patients. Over to you.
Thank you very much, François. And I think it was very important to come back at the beginning, also because he can teach us what is happening today, as you mentioned, and to make the transition about what is currently happening today. That's something that you mentioned. I will give you a floor to you, Dimitrios. Because in 2025, you were one of the first patient representatives to be involved under the HTA regulation implementations. So I would like to ask you what motivated you to be part of this process, and also what is your experience? How was it to be part of this process as one of the first patient representatives?
Thank you. I think I will pick it up from where François left it.
It's perfect.
So, yeah, I mean, it was a fantastic journey, as Francois said, to see patient involvement, I would say, starting from EMA and then moving to HTA. What is very interesting is that we saw in this first, let's say, year, the first couple of years, it's supposed to be cancer. But also, if you look at the details, it's also ATMPs, which means is everybody. So nobody can be super relaxed that, my condition will not be there. That is one issue. And that is what happened also, let's say, to neuromuscular diseases. So everybody can be involved, or there can be a call, as you said, from you in a very short, limited time to get involved. What was the first impression? Because I think you start from there. Of course, the first initial super small timelines are super unproductive, especially if you are talking for rare diseases, because I come from a rare disease. So I know that it is almost impossible in 1 week to find somebody who can read a file in English with HTA terms or regulatory terms in 1 week and 3 days and give feedback, meaningful feedback. Because in many of these cases, when we're talking about access and we're talking about HTA, especially for rare diseases or rare cancers, pediatric cancers, Josephine, you might have just one chance for a drug in your lifetime. So you cannot mess it up. So I would say that was my motivation, let's say, to make sure that I don't mess it up for my community. But the second part, which was also extremely interesting, and I know that you're going to cover it down in the discussion, it was the very good experience I have with the Commission and Julie, and I know that Julie personally made a difference. This I can guarantee you. So the process was smooth beyond that. But what was shocking, it was, for example, the conflict of interest. So I was a former pediatric committee member with an updated DUI. So that means 140 pediatric investigation plans per month, with involvement in scientific advice, oral explanation, etc. It's in EMA, and still my DUI was not good enough for HTA, which is, I find it ridiculous from my side. You can quote me, that's my personal opinions, all right? Because then we lose a pool of experts that we already have in EMA. And this is critical, especially in rare diseases. So there are some minor, and I would say minor differences. So, for example, be part of a patient advisory group. That doesn't bring you a conflict, which brings you, let's say, in EMA, and being part, I don't know, a treasurer in an organization that you don't have any direct benefit from any funding, that this represents conflict to you personally. So this is something that it is limiting, especially for disease organizations, but inside the regulation, the HTA, it is clear that the law says that, in rare disease is flexible. So the first part is this, and the second part is about the readiness of the system. I know that was, let's say, the pilot. And I appreciate that. And I do appreciate that there was, let's say, a big effort to accommodate the needs of the patients, also from the HTA colleagues, but also from the Commission. Still, there are things to be learned. From our experience, let's say, the one thing that we thought granted, it was the quality of some of the comments, of some of the documents, of some of the knowledge of the disease. I understand this is a rare disease. I understand the knowledge is limited. We also have some doubts, let's say, about the quality of the experts selected. Not the quality in the scientific area. The scientific area should be fantastic, but they were a little more far from what the, let's say, product-specific or disease-specific requirement requested. But I think that was flagged. There was an time to discuss, which is critical, although the initial document is very basic, and I'm not sure that it really captures, let's say, the feedback that we can provide as patients and as patient experts. I think there was time inside the discussion with the colleagues to address, let's say, the topics. Something that was super nicely incorporated and appreciated versus the EMA, if I change, let's say, the style, is that all the comments of the patient experts were incorporated inside the file. Something that we don't see, and we see a summary in, or a translation of what we meant in EMA. So there are pros and cons. It is a process. Obviously, what is needed is more time, especially for the patient organizations, to identify their experts, plus to train. And maybe the last comment from me, and sorry I took long, but it was, I think it might be interesting, is that as the same as applies to EMA, that our drugs are not approved or accessed on emotions, they're approved on data. It is very critical the people we send can read scientific papers, can quote the scientific papers to support their arguments, because they have most probably to contract support the arguments towards everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Dimitrios. And I think you already answered to one of my last questions, what is working, what has not been working, but I'm sure you will have other comment on this. And thank you very much for sharing your perspective. I will give back the floor to Josephine now. Josephine, as Cancer Patient Europe, you're one of the patient organization under the HTA Stakeholder Network. I know you have been involved a lot in 2025. Can you give us a little bit an example of what practically you have done to ensure that the patients who have been selected, sharing the contact details to the commission, are really involved in the process? How did you manage to ensure this involvement?
Thanks, Solène. I think maybe before I even really further deep dive, just for clarity for everyone online. So patient organizations are part of the stakeholder network, and they are opportunities for members of the stakeholder network, so the patient groups, to participate in assessments. However, for us at CP, this hasn't happened yet, so I cannot, as a patient organization representative, give you any insights as to the assessments. So I'm really happy Dimitrios can share, and I could share some feedback we received further in the conversation. Now, our role, and you were describing that, Solène, is to find the patients, right? To identify them. And so this has been very work intensive for us. Last year, we identified 33 patients out of 4 bulk requests for patients we got from the European Commission. And we have 6 patients that were then identified and went through. So we know that it's been working. The process has been successful. Now, obviously, a lot of work went into this. So for when you identify someone, of course, you need to introduce them to what this is all about and to explain to the extent of your knowledge. You were describing that, Solène, so I won't go into further detail. But I think what I want to focus on in my answer is the fact that we in Brussels know what this is all about. We're aware about this new legislation. We know what it's about, but there's definitely a challenge here. And this is something we worked on really hard last year, and we will continue working on, about information, about knowledge in the countries, and the fact that patients from all over Europe can participate. And so this is something we worked on last year a lot. So we organized, there were webinars, we had different, we were very vocal at different gatherings, but we also organized events in countries. So we had an event in Spain, we had an event in Italy, and we're looking to go to the countries to really introduce the patient communities and to also clarify how, because one question that keeps coming back from the patient communities are, but how do we get involved? How do we get in? And a very simple answer as of now is you need to go to the members of the stakeholder networks, who will then reach out to you when there's a request. So that's what I say. But I think it's a really important message that needs to come, to come from us, because otherwise it won't be clear and it will just be something, an ongoing question. So anyways, won't go further than this for the time being. Thanks.
Thank you, Josephine. And I think this webinar is also for that, not everyone is indeed an expert on HTA, and the goal is also our objective as patient organization to make this regulation better known and how to be involved. And I hope that your message was shared. I will come back a little bit about already what Dimitrios started to highlight, but so what I will give you the floor to each 3 of you. You will have to let me know, according to you, what has worked during the first phase of implementation and what can be improved. So Dimitrios, you mentioned it a little bit, but you will have a possibility to explain a little bit in more details. So I don't know who would like to take the floor first. Go ahead. Josephine, I can see you nod a little bit.
We should start from Josephine this time. Come on.
Josephine first this time.
So I'm here, so I can give some input from CP's perspective and also some of the patient's perspective. And I'm saying that because we sent out a survey that we sent out to patients last June to gather some feedback on how the process had gone for them so far. And we also organized a focus group discussion with patients that were already part of the assessments that Dimitrios, you kindly joined. And so I don't want to take anything from your feedback, but I thought maybe I could share some insights. So from the perspective of Cancer Patients Europe, you already said it, Dimitrios, but I think overall it's so positive. I think that it's a very special opportunity for us, civil society, to be right at the middle of the implementation of a regulation and be a cog in the system and being able to provide this feedback and to shape how the regulation has gone. So I just wanted to start with this really positive note, because this stands out for us, at least at CPE, as one, way where we really can make a change and a difference. And so that has been going really well. The stakeholder network meetings were part of working groups on the identification of patients, where we were able to feed into how our experiences had been going, and there was already some changes made. You said, Solène, timelines at the beginning were insane. Finding someone in a week is just absolutely insane. But, now we got 5 weeks for the last bulk request, which is a very reasonable timeline. There were the technicalities with the issues with the IT platform, and now there are IT technicians that can support patients. So I think, that's been really interesting and really positive, is that we have this opportunity to provide feedback and get heard. So I think it's important to highlight that. Now, of course, this is a new regulation. There's things that need improvement upon, right? And so feedback that we have as CPE are that there's an issue with we don't necessarily have enough detailed information on profiles that we're looking for sometimes. I mean, for instance, if you're looking for someone with breast cancer, that's not enough. You need to know the subcategory of breast cancer, right? So that's one point we really do hope to see. And I know that there are reasons for that, but we hope to have more details. And we also would like to have feedback to the extent possible on the selection or non-selections of patients, because we've had people come back to us and say, why wasn't I selected? What's going on? Can you give me information? So definitely that would be really interesting. And we want to be able to go beyond our immediate network. What I mean is that we have a month now, but still the natural impulse is to go to the people right? And I think we need to go beyond that. So one thing we hope to see happen, this year is also to anticipate requests to the extent possible and really throw out, basically go out to the communities and identify profiles and be able to support them in advance. So when the request comes in, we have people that could, be interested and be ready and trained to the extent possible. And sorry, I'll go quickly, but for patients, I don't want to take over because I know, Dimitrios, you have feedback, but there's definitely issues with language and complexity. So the fact that it's in English, the fact that it's jargon, that it's not easily interpreted for anyone, definitely a learning curve there. There's need for support, onboarding, mentoring, so that patients are not on their own when they're in the system. And there is a need to understand what the impact is. And I know you touched upon that, Dimitrios, already. And finally, operational constraints. I think, yes, the workloads, the timelines, the platform, I think definitely needs to be addressed. So yeah, these are some initial thoughts here.
Yeah, thank you very much, Josephine. And indeed, at EPS, we answered to your survey and we have been participated in the meeting. So what I can summarize is indeed good communication and anyway with the HTA unit to flag, as something I've mentioned at the beginning, some improvement. Indeed, the timeline that were a little bit extended, the IT platform, but we would like to see more, especially the feedback who have been selected. Indeed, we had the same problem when we don't know who has been selected and for which reason this person was not selected. But this is something maybe we can touch upon with Julie right after. François Dimitrios, I don't know, François, you would like, I can see.
Yes, quickly. So we looked for patients for 16 different procedures, clinical assessment, but also the scientific consultations. 16, well, in fact, 12 were for rare diseases, rare cancers or advanced therapies nowadays are all for rare diseases. So for these 12 procedures, we could propose patients for 9 of them. And for some, we did not because we knew others had identified patients. But to find 21 patients, we had to contact 98 people from 23 different countries, which is important because we need to be sure we diversify the origin of the patients. 36 were men and 62 were women. And so we need really, I think the main challenge is to identify the people who can contribute the most to the limited involvement patients have so far, which is almost exclusively to prepare to decide the list of questions sent to the company based on which the company will submit all the data needed to assess the technology. And you can only do this as a patient, I think. That's my personal opinion. If you are very familiar with the treatment guidelines, if you only know your own treatment, maybe another treatment you heard in the country, and if you don't know how standard of care is in other countries, you cannot protest in a meeting and say they shouldn't propose this medicine as a comparator. It's obsolete, it's even dangerous for some patients. So unless you are really very familiar with the European guidelines when they exist and the differences in access to care in different countries, it may be very difficult to contribute as much as you would like. And we have to be aware and concerned that it can be humiliating for some to be invited to a meeting where they realize they are not prepared, they did not expect to be asked these questions. And when I say in a meeting, it's wrong because most of the involvement is in writing. And that is another concern because that is not the easiest way to discuss with patients. Healthcare professionals, researchers may be perfectly at ease in commenting and writing. Mm-hmm. For us, I think we need it. We know it's important to accommodate. We developed a chatbot based on all the questions, more than 100 questions we receive. And we are also discussing with patients about the difficulties they have. Luckily, the commission is smart, so they created a working group with patient organizations who are part of the stakeholder network, where we can share our experience and improve it. And maybe to finish on this, we regret that from the beginning, it's not exactly a scientific dialogue. It's member state imposing the questions they want the company to respond to. And even if some questions make no sense, because they can impose them, it increases the workload on the company side. You may say, well, what's the problem? The pharmaceutical industry is rich. They can pay millions of euros needed to prepare for the assessment. But when it is an academic center or an hospital proposing to European patients an advanced therapy, they don't have the millions needed to answer all the questions that 27 member states might have, and then they are lost. And we have already seen one network of academic centers that withdrew the marketing authorization application for a gene therapy based on the complexity of both the regulatory and HTA procedures.
Thank you, François. And I think this is something we can definitely discuss a little bit with Julie if she has some element on this. And thank you for sharing your experience on this and also on the chat box. I think this is very interesting to see. And also, Josephine, you mentioned what you have been doing at Caution Person Europe to try also in this time of a first time of implementation, the complexity for some patients to try to find a solution to improve the knowledge on the regulation. Dimitrios, I could see you doing like this when François was speaking. We are a little bit out of time, but I would like to give you also the floor to maybe react about what has been working in 2025 and what can be improved, and especially on what François and Josephine has just mentioned.
Thank you. I was moving my head because I fully agree with Francois, and we have the same experience, let's say, coming also from EMA from time to time. So my first comment is why it's important, and why we have to make it succeed, because we see our involvement in the previous stage of regulatory activity, like EMA, diminishing. We see the patient participation is less inside the scientific advice and the pure statistically, and we also going to lose with the let's say with the absolution of the committees that we have, the patient representatives we have there. So we need to balance our presentation in the next level, and the next level HTA. I pick it from the second point that Francois said. You have to have a very good, or at least a basic understanding of what's happening in Europe. So if you have a GCA centrally, it's not about your country. It's something that's decided in a European level. You have to know what you're talking about. The one is the helicopter view, and to have access to this kind of information if you do not know on spot when you are, let's say, looking at the file. And the second is to have enough time. And we had an intensive discussion with Josephine that AI is not there yet to do automatic translations. So if you have 2 days to report on a document, and trust me, it's not important to report on the document that it is 2 pages. It is important to comment on the document that it is 140 pages, because the interesting elements, like the scientific advice, is in the 140, not in the 2 pages they will send you. You need to know where to find your reference, where you find your publications, and how you can fight for your arguments. That's how it's done currently. Most probably in the future it will change, but this is how it happens now. Closing, I would say that there is a lot of good intention. I echo what Francois said, that each country will put, let's say, its own questions, and that's valid, but this doesn't guarantee quality. So you might have some questions that are weak, and I put it politely. So we cannot feel secure that the quality is always there. This is an assumption that we should not have in life in general. So it is for the patient organization, things the last frontier. And I think what we succeed by having all our organizations together and working all organizations together and communicating and bridging the knowledge, this is the starting point for us. And actually, I have to leave soon because having the experience in the JCA, we have the training of the HTA for 3 months in Greece for the rare disease patients. So yeah, I have to leave you at some point.
Thank you, Dimitrios. And I think this is another aspect that something we need to consider is the training of patients indeed, which has been a little bit complicating with resource constraints here at the EU level. But this is something very important because we need also to give a possibility to do the training. Before that, we need the resources. So before closing the chat discussion, very quickly, what are you going to do in 2026? What are your main activity plan for patients' involvement? Dimitrios already
I will
the training.
start so I can leave. I start so I can leave. So I'm doing the training, guys. If I turn the camera, you will see 25 patient experts from rare disease get trained.
Say hi to everyone.
First lesson for 3 months. It's gonna be intense.
Perfect. You start very well 2026. Good luck for that. Josephine, François, main activity in 2026?
Main activity, definitely continuing to go to the countries. I think that, this is an example of what the EU is doing on health that directly impacts patients in the countries. So we'll be doing more of that. I'm actually going to Paris in 10 days to do that, and we aim to continue doing that. I think the training part is really, really important. So I think that we will be looking into it. And we also, and this is a call to the 139 people on this call, we want to make it very clear how you can get involved. And we want to the extent possible, build a wider pool of patients, of potential patients, of carers that could be involved. That's really, really important. It goes back to Francois's point about representativity. It's really important that we don't go to the usual suspects all the time. So that's something we'll be working on. We already have started working on, but we will continue this year. And that also goes with being able to anticipate requests. And that's been an interesting point that we've already had opportunity to discuss with the Brussels Center for Collaboration in Health, which manage the admin side of this regulation, and they might be, we'd be able to collaborate with them to have a longer term visibility on what's coming so that we can train people ahead. So goals for 26.
And last word for you, Francois.
So we would like to resume the training we did with you, EPF, and with the University of UMIT, called UCAPA. It's a capacity building training for patient advocates with face-to-face to acquire the skills, not only the knowledge, but the skills in HTA. And the second activity, in part, evaluating the HTA regulation, will be to grade or to rank the quality of the GCA reports to come. We would like to do this with other patient organizations of the stakeholder network, but since the coordination group doesn't want stakeholders to join the meetings and adopt with them these reports, we are taking the liberty to publish ourselves what we can think of these reports, how useful we think they are, and to rank the quality of the involvement of patients in the different reports by different authors. So I think that will take some of our time to read the report first, see what they contain, what they don't contain, and grade or rate them.
Thank you very much, Francois, Josephine, and Dimitrios. I think like in this short chat discussion, I think we could talk for hours about what we've been doing in 2025 and what are our plans for 2026. To summarize, I think we have worked tirelessly to ensure that there is patient involvement. We are trying our best, and I think we can do better with the support of the commissions and other stakeholders. Things need to be improved. But I think we are all ready for 2026 to continue this activity. You mentioned some of them. I think Valentina put actually on the chat group the training UCAPA. So if people would like to know what Francois was mentioning about. Thank you very much for having shared your experiences, and we will for sure continue this collaboration in 2026, because what I think is very important for our conversation is we can do this alone. Not only one patient organization can ensure that there is a strong patient involvement and that the HTA regulation is working in practice and can at the end of the day ensure better access to treatment across Europe. It's by working up together that we can secure that, and I think we show it today. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you to Julie that's coming afterwards for being responsive, because guys, I've never seen the commission so responsive since Julie is there. He gets back into it. So thank you, guys.
And a good transition, Dimitrios, actually. So we had this short discussion with patient representatives on how they did in 2025 to ensure meaningful patient involvement and what they would like to see happening in the coming years. But now we will have a chance to discuss about this with the European Commission, actually, with Julie Sponi. She is part of a HTA unit, and she's part of patients' involvement inside the HTA unit. And to give you a little bit of context and background, before going to the Commission, Julie was working actually at EPF on HTA and on patient involvement. So she has a lot of expertise. Welcome, Julie.
Thanks, Solène, and yes, good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here. And as Solène said, I'm part of a unit inside the Commission dealing with the implementation of the HTA regulation. And as you may know, the responsibility of the Commission is to identify patients and clinicians to participate in the joint work, while the involvement and the selection of these patients and clinicians is the responsibility of member states. But we facilitate the process of involvement of patients along the way. Thanks.
So thank you very much, Julie, for the short introduction, and maybe you can go into deeper detail. So we mentioned that it has been a year since the HTA regulation entered into this phase of implementations. And what have you been doing to ensure this patient's involvement, actually? What were the main action and tasks that happened in 2025 to ensure patient's involvement?
Thanks. It seems like just a year ago, but it seems like 10 years ago that we started this process. So 2025 was the year in which we developed and implemented the system for patient involvement and also clinicians, but I will focus on patient for today's webinar. So as you said, the regulation entered into force last January, but we had the first assessments last March. So with that, the work on patient involvement also began. So first, we established a working group to co-create the process. We heard it before, but yes, this group includes patients and clinicians, organizations from the stakeholder network, so EPF, ORDIS, CPE are in that working group. We also have the chairs and co-chairs of the HTA coordination group and its subgroups. We have the European Medicines Agency and the Brussels Center for Collaboration in Health, which is the organization responsible for the contracts for patients and clinicians participating in the process. So we put together all the stakeholders involved along the way to really co-create the process, and thanks to them and also in line with the legislation, we created a process covering everything from receiving information on the disease and therapeutic area for a specific joint work to reaching out to EU-level patients and clinician organizations to identify patients. So 2025 was the year in which we developed the system, but it was also a year of learning. And as we implemented the process, we refined it thanks to the valuable feedback we received from the patient organizations, notably. So we heard it before. We started with targeted requests with just a 1-week deadline, which is not feasible at all, and fair enough, but you cannot find suitable patients within that deadline. So now we move towards longer deadlines. We had a 5-week deadline for the last bulk requests. We also developed additional communication materials on what can constitute a conflict of interest, for instance. And we also set up a dedicated IT team to support patients and clinicians taking part in the process. I'm sure not everyone is aware, but we have been dealing with this famous IT platform, but we have a HTA IT platform where the joint work takes place, and patients participating in the process need to connect to that IT platform to fill in a DOI, and once they are selected, they need to access the IT platform, and it may not be the most user-friendly platform, so we now have a dedicated team to help them. So I would say that all in all, 2025 was the year where we implemented, we had the first implementation of patient involvement in HTA at EU level, but this was also a year of learnings because we made already some changes in the process thanks to the feedback we received.
Thank you, Julie. And I think I will follow the same structure that I did with Joséphine, Dimitrios, and François. I asked them what, according to them, has worked and what could be improved. And they mentioned some elements, and I would like to give you the possibility to react to some of them.
Yes, no, but I mean, I heard many elements that is also the elements for us that didn't, that would require some improvement. But I would maybe like to start with a more positive note, because the first thing that worked well for us, I must say, was the enthusiasm and the responsiveness of the organizations to work with us to identify participants as well as the patients involved. So just to give you an example, for the first bulk requests, we launched last April. So when I say bulk requests, I mean that we launched a request for patients with lived experience for several conditions. And for the first bulk request we launched, we received more than 90 nominations of patients and clinicians from the organizations in the stakeholder network. So this is a huge number, considering that we are kind of the new kids in the block. HTA is not widely known at the national level, so it was very encouraging to see such a enthusiasm for the opportunity to be involved. However, we know that we still need to raise awareness of the HTA regulation. We heard Joséphine saying that we we need to speak to the local level, to the national level, and this is something at the Commission we are trying to go to different conferences, different fora to really raise awareness of the possibility to be involved. In addition to that, and to the need to raise awareness, if we go into the more practicalities of the implementation, we saw as we implemented the identification and then the involvement of patients, that we need to provide tailored support throughout the process. So from the moment we establish contact with them to fill in a DOI, but also when they are actually involved to provide feedback. We heard it before that the documents can be quite complex, and it's also all in English. So when it's not your native language, this can be quite complicated. We are also working on this with member states to have clear templates for patients to be able to provide input. We also heard I heard some remarks about the conflict of interest rules, and here we noticed that there is some misunderstanding about about the conflict of interest rules, and that any conflict of interest could lead to exclusions, which is not the case. So we also need to do an extra effort on this to make sure that people understand that it's not because you have a conflict of interest, but you cannot participate in the joint work. We also have some flexibility with rare disease. So we really need to increase the awareness about the HTA regulation, but also about the conflict of interest rules. And I would say one maybe last point that was not really mentioned previously, but for us it's something we have to deal with, is also working in this uncertain environment because we don't know exactly when the marketing authorization application will be submitted. So when we receive a marketing authorization application, I mean, when VMA receives a marketing authorization application, it triggers a joint clinical assessment. And so we may identify patients for a specific indication for a marketing authorization application that is imminent, but then the company delays their plans by months. So we also need to navigate this uncertainty and to be able to identify patients early in advance for them to be able to contribute as early as possible in the process. But we also need to balance this with the uncertainty of the process. And yeah, all the issues I mentioned and the one I heard, we are aware of them, and we're working to improve them. And that's why we have this working group also on identification of patients and clinicians, but also the HTA stakeholder network, and also webinars like this where we can hear the feedback and then act on it.
Thank you, Julie. And I think you replied to some of the comments, and this is something maybe that was highlighted by Josephine and Dimitrios and François, is we collaborate to try indeed to give you some feedback about the process, and we hope to continue this in 2026 because it's a learning in practice. So we discuss extensively with European Commission about this element to improve, and we hope that is the timeline of the languages, of the conflict of interest. We will find a better way to balance the interest of everyone. And maybe the last question, it would be very interesting to know what the Commission planned for 2026 in terms of patient involvement. Maybe regarding this is something that was mentioned by Josephine, the Brussels Center for Collaboration in Health. Or maybe linked to some trainings. I know I've seen some comments in the chat asking if the European Commission plans to do more trainings at the EU level for HTA. I don't know if you can reply to that.
Oh, thanks a lot. That's an excellent question. So we heard about the UCAPA project. We also have the HTA for Patients project with UPATI that were both 2 EU-funded projects that came to an end this year. And with the Brussels Center for Collaboration in Health, so BCCH, I'm sorry for all the acronyms, but BCCH is basically the organization responsible, as I said, for the contracts and compensation of patients involved in the joint work. They will take the materials developed by these 2 projects to put them on a dedicated web page that will be shared with patients that are selected. So once patients are selected, we transmit their contact details to BCCH, and that's where BCCH will share with them all the training materials. In addition to this, we are also exploring, I mean, BCCH is also exploring to have onboarding calls with patients. I know this was also a big ask that we heard from different patient organizations, and this is also important for patients once they start, because they are in contact with different actors, and I can imagine that it's kind of it's helpful to have a first contact over the phone. Although we also at the Commission, we also give them the possibility to call us at any time of the process, but yeah, it can also be quite intimidating. So hopefully there's onboarding, and the website with the training will provide some help to patients to be involved in the process. And if I can also mention our plans for 2026.
Go ahead.
Not only regarding trainings, but regarding raising awareness, but also improving the involvement of patients in the joint work. So we are planning to have soon a dedicated website on the European Commission website, so the European website on patients and clinicians' involvement, to really showcase the importance with a Q&A to explain how patients can get involved. I heard Josephine mention that this is the main question they receive. So hopefully with this webpage, it can also provide some guidance to anyone who would be interested to participate. As I said as well before, we are working with member states to create templates for patients' input and for involving patient organizations. We will also have the HTA stakeholder network meetings and the working group meetings to provide opportunity to receive feedback and then to reflect on the work. Because next year we will step up the joint work. I don't know if you saw the new work program for 2026, but the HTA coordination group, so the which is made up of HTA bodies and authorities representative, said that they will initiate around 50 joint clinical assessments for medicines containing new active substance for the treatment of cancer and for ATMPs. And they will also do 5 joint clinical assessments for selected high-risk medical devices. And then they also plan to hold 8 to 12 joint scientific consultations. So in all these procedures, patients will be involved. So it means that we also need to find these patients we need to find them, to identify them, to select them, and then to involve them. So hopefully with all the different measures and initiatives we will put in place next year, they will have a smooth and meaningful involvement. And again, we count on the different patient organizations to keep us on our toes and to provide feedback on what we can improve.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you to have taken the time to give a perspective of the European Commission. And I hope indeed that we can continue this collaboration. It's only the beginning, something I mentioned right at the beginning of the opening of this webinar. I might only ask you one last question from the chat. So there will not be training funding in 2026, right? This is something mentioned in the chat.
No, I didn't say that. The work program is not out yet, so I cannot comment on the funding.
Perfect.
But look for the 2026 work program of the European Commission. EU for Health program, and that's where you will find the information, but it's not out yet.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Now we are almost at the end of our webinar. So we mentioned the discussion with a patient representative who gave us their perspective for 2025. We had the discussion with the European Commission, also highlighted what they have been doing in terms of patients' involvement in 2025 and in 2026. But we talk indeed a lot about the HTA regulation, but other things are happening at the same time. And I'm very happy to welcome in this this webinar my colleague Bianca Pop. She's a project officer at EPF, and she will introduce to you the EDITA project is not per se on the HTA regulation, but is closely linked. So I will give you the time to introduce yourself, Bianca, so I can share my screen.
Thank you, Selene. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So I'm Bianca Pop, and I'm currently working as a project officer at the European Patients Forum. I'm also coordinating the patient engagement work in the EDITA project on behalf of EPF, which is a beneficiary in this EU-funded initiatives. And yeah, I will take 10 minutes to introduce you to this project. If you can move on to the next slide, please. So when we actually build the agenda, the next one. Thank you. So when we built actually the agenda for today's webinar, we felt that EDITA project would be an excellent example to highlight here. For those of you who are not familiar with EDITA, this is a 4-year research and innovation action funded under the Horizon Europe program. This is led by Cattolica University. We started the project in January 2024, and we have quite a strong consortium. EDITA brings together 19 consortium partners from 10 European countries. As you can see here, we have Ministry of Health, HTA agency, hospitals, patients, and patient representatives, as well as researchers and academia representatives. When it comes to EPF, so our main role is to ensure that patients contribute meaningfully to the project and that they are involved in the development of the EDITA framework. Next slide, please. So the main objective of the EDITA project is to really develop the very first flexible and ready to use European digital health technology assessment framework for digital health technologies specifically. And this is being co-created by all stakeholders, patients included. It is very, very important to pay attention to the fact that this framework is for digital health technologies specifically, and by digital health technologies, we actually mean digital tools such as telemedicine systems, mobile health applications, digital medical devices, or AI-developed tools. And although these innovations can improve patient care and health system efficiency, each country actually and HTA organization currently assess them differently. So there is a need for harmonization, which makes actually, because of this gap, this makes it difficult to compare results, but also ensure that all patients receive equally safe and efficient care. So this is where EDITA will play a key role. And in practical terms, we are also trying to answer a need, because now, well, what you should expect from the EDITA is also not like a long static PDF document with the the domains and the assessment methodology like we have in EUNETA core model, which is the standardized framework used in HTA currently, but this was actually not very much tailored to digital health technology specifically. So again, there is a need for harmonization and to kind of build this framework and make it adaptable to digital health technologies specifically. What you should expect from this project is first the EDITA framework, but also educational resources. And I'm really glad to hear that you mentioned EUCAPA and HTA for Patient projects. We have them both on our radar when building these educational resources, and this will be actually co-created with the patient advisory group and potentially patient organizations as well, but also a repository. So as I said, why do we need EDITA? It's mainly because the common reference framework for assessing health technologies is the EUNETA core model. However, as I said, it was not fully developed with the specific characteristics of digital health technologies in mind. So in response to this gap, we will capture, not only the clinical and economic value, but also, real world use and user experience. And what we really aim to do is to deliver the framework that is designed for application across all EU member states at multiple levels of HTA, so national, regional, but also at a hospital level, and for different types of digital health technologies. If you can move on to the next slide, please. So this is, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but this is simply to say that we divided the work into 4 phases, so analysis, design, development, and piloting. And actually, during the first 2 years of the project, we as a consortium, we focused a lot on mapping the European and national regulatory frameworks relevant to digital health technologies. This also includes not only the HTA, so the HTA regulation, but also European Health Data Space Regulation, MDR, AI Act, as well as Cyber Resilience Act. We also identify stakeholder needs and decision requirements across digital health technology lifecycle. We run this exercise in parallel with different stakeholder groups, patients included. I'll go back to this in a bit. We also developed a shared taxonomy and conceptualized the framework. And also we defined a set of assessment domains and also evidence requirements. And we are now in the stage where we try to digitalize the framework, but also we are moving forward with the piloting phase. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is actually an overview of stakeholder participation and engagement in the EDITA initiative. And overall, as you can see here, we had 97 organizations that were involved as of now. And engagement actually covered 5 key stakeholder groups, patients and patient representatives included. And we really wanted to make sure that we address the needs of all relevant stakeholder groups, whether, for instance, whether it's a patient in Greece, Norway, or in the UK, as well as a policymaker, HTA agency, industry, or healthcare professionals. We are also building the EDITA framework actually with a future development in mind, and we've been warned about the policy landscape, which is actually evolving, also the EHDS regulations. So we are considering all of these developments. We are also building it on the principles such as joint scientific consultation, but also JCA. And we really aim to involve all stakeholders from the outset, which we did actually, and we will keep going. So to go back a bit to the HTA regulation, is just to say that, yeah, so we are developing this to address the needs and also identify, what evidence is needed and at which stage of the digital health technology life cycle. So we try to make it as flexible as possible, but also adaptable to future developments. And I can give you just a brief example. So if, for instance, if like a developer is developing a technology that integrates elements such as AI or other digital health tools to treat cancer or rare diseases, this can potentially fall under go for a JCA. Next slide, please. Yes, now more about the patient engagement. Well, the very first step EPF took in this project was to set up the patient advisory group. Because what we see is that traditionally HTA has been led by experts that are very much focusing on clinical and economic evidence, whereas patients should be treated as equal stakeholders in such projects, and their perspective really matter. We really need their lived experience and also their perspectives. So we EPF launched a call for interest back in August 2024, and then we received, if I remember correctly, more than 40 applications. We assessed the applications and we gathered together 15 members that are now part of the patient advisory group. They are coming from 10 different countries, representing different disease areas, and also they are coming coming with different levels of technology expertise. Some of them are very much focused on AI and telemedicine. Some very much interested in digital medical devices or telemedicine. One of the main exercises we delivered was to identify their needs and requirements. So we first ran a piloting focus group, not with the patient advisory group, but with the digital health working group of EPF to assess the needs. And then based on those findings, we also, once the patient advisory group was set up, we ran 2 focus group discussions focusing on their needs and patients' needs and requirements when it comes to using AI and telemedicine on one hand, and on the other hand, the second focus group discussion focused very much on digital medical devices. We also, because we wanted to deepen a bit conversation around digital health technologies, we also launched a podcast series. We have already 2 podcast episodes available on the Edita website, and there is one more to come in the coming weeks, and the topic will be very much related to the digital health, digital medical devices. We also held a member circle. This is 1 out of 3 member circles to be delivered until the end of 2026, because we really wanted to, spread the word about the project, the current status of the work, and really engage the patient community, not only the patient advisory group, the internal patient advisory group in Edita, but also the broader community and EPF patient community. In terms of outcomes, it was mentioned several times that early and meaningful patient involvement is essential, not only in the HTA processes, but also when designing and developing digital health technologies. Participation of patient organizations in regulatory and also HTA processes actually ensures that patient perspective is embedded in technology evaluation, which also enhance legitimacy and transparency. Another finding was transparency, and this was mentioned several times. Transparency in decision making is really important. All those findings are well captured in one of our deliverables, but also we took into consideration the feedback we received during the focus group discussions when developing the concept design of the framework. And there is also room for involvement, because we really want to involve not only the patient advisory group members, but also the broader patient community moving forward. For instance, in February, there will be a multi-stakeholder event happening in Brussels. 5 members of the patient advisory group will be joining on site to take part in this evaluation process. But afterwards, in March, we also plan to run a survey, a feedback survey, and it is not, dedicated to the consortium partners. We really want to reach as many European countries as possible and as many patients as possible. So if you're a member of EPF or part of our network, you will hear from us soon. So stay tuned. Then next slide, please. Yeah, so in terms of next steps, yeah, we are now in the process of digitalizing the toolkit. We are also considering some interview sessions with some patient organizations that are part of the HTA stakeholder network. We had a very first chat with cancer patient organizations right before this webinar, because we really want to kind of we want them to share their experience when it comes to engaging in the HTA processes. and it's really valuable to know their feedback. We are also moving into the piloting phase. In the first phase, this is going to be very much tailored to developers, but then by September 2026, so in the coming months, one of our milestones in the project is to also deliver the MVP, so the minimal viable product, which then will be tested and fine-tune. So there will be a chance also for patients and patient organizations to for patients specifically to assess the tool. And then, of course, in 2027, we'll focus very much on the sustainability. We are also considering this when we are developing the framework. And then, yeah, next slide, please. So yeah, this is just to say that, as I mentioned, in March, there will be a survey, or we'll be circulating this survey to our network to gather your feedback on the EDITA framework. And then, of course, who can participate, everyone. This is very, very much tailored to whoever is interested in taking part and helping us, reshaping and finalizing the framework. And also when it comes to the open piloting phase, this will happen actually from September this year once the MVP is ready until April next year. But you will hear from us in the coming months. So stay tuned. And I guess with this, I'm at the end of the presentation. Happy to take a question, if any. If not,
what
yeah.
I can suggest is for the moment, I don't think we have any question, but we put all of the link of EDITA on the chat group. I will also add our LinkedIn account and also our website where you can find also additional information, and also the element that was mentioned by Bianca about the possibility to participate in some of the activities of the EDITA project. It's a very vast project, but very interesting, very linked to what is happening in the HTA environment. There is not only the HTA regulation, but it's very close to it. So if you're interested, please feel free to contact Bianca, but also to go on our LinkedIn account where we will post about this possibility of involvement. So I think we reached almost the end of our webinar, but we couldn't finish the webinar without having the possibility to Valentina, our Interim Executive Director at EPF, to close it and to show us a little bit the road ahead for 2026, but also after 2026. We mentioned a lot of things. We had the possibility to discuss on this EDITA project, but also with patient representative, the commission. So Valentina, I think you have 3 minutes to try to summarize 1 hour and a half webinar.
Thank you, Solan. So it was a very intense and interesting webinar. Before closing and before going ahead with my insights, I wish to thank all panelists and Solan for driving this session. It has been extremely informative for everyone, and I think it's the way we need to move forward, actually. We need to keep very high the level of attention on this dossier. As EPF, I think our role will be always the one of coordinating patient organizations and supporting patient communities, gaining better understanding of HTA, what can be done at European level, even what can be done on the national level. So there is a lot of work ahead of us. It never ends because there are always newcomers to HTA. And so this means that we can never stop doing trainings, even though sometimes we may not have the capacity to drive face-to-face trainings. We will always promote the tools that are available. And so feel free to visit the UCAPA website, the HTA for Patients one, and also all other available tools that are, for example, present on the HTA International platform. There are plenty of materials available out there that we can look at. Some reflections regarding 26 and beyond. I would say we have a lot of matters to look at to improve the system and improve the way patient involvement works in HTA and HTA regulation. So our patient organizations, including also EuroRDis and Cancer Patients Europe and many others, will keep working on that, monitoring the processes, identifying bottlenecks, and provide advice to the European Commission to make sure that the patient experience is as meaningful as possible. I will keep an eye on the key performance indicators that are being discussed eventually in events, but we know that there are discussions going on there. We want to make sure that relevant key performance indicators are available also to assess patient involvement, because we want this to improve. It's not about maybe criticizing the way the regulation is implemented. It's about making it more workable and meaningful to patients. Another element, it was already raised, is conflict of interest. It's still a bottleneck to patient involvement. We need to work looking at the long-term impact of interactions between stakeholders, patients with other stakeholders, including companies. We need to work having in mind not just the immediate return, but what this implies in a longer term. And to that purpose, as EPF, we are going to organize some capacity building activities to build that awareness about what conflict of interest is. As Julie mentioned, often there is a misunderstanding of what it is, what it implies. We want to make sure there is full understanding about that, and also avoid that maybe some patients decline participation because they feel that they cannot join. Maybe there will be opportunities where flexibility will be there, and even though there is a potential or perceived conflict, this doesn't result in an effective one. So we need to really pay attention to these details. So that's the end of my presentation. A very quick one. I hope everybody can go back to their day work with some inspiration. And I would say stay tuned, because as EPF, but I would say the world patient community active on the European level will stay awake, watching what's going on, and providing support to make sure that this system works for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And with those words, we close the webinar. I would like to thank all of the speakers today who take the time to exchange with us. And for sure, we will continue, as mentioned by Valentina, to work on HTA and to ensure that there is a true patient involvement, to ensure that the regulation is working in practice. Have a lovely afternoon, everyone.